Welcome to the Climate Hive podcast. What do you solve? I'm Kevin Drolet, aka Kdro, and I'm here with my co-host and Climate Hive co-founder, Mike Higgins, aka Higo. Our guest today is Will Wiseman, CEO and co-founder of Climatize. Will has over 10 years, in the last 10 years, played every role in the solar industry across finance, project management, and construction, where he built 15 solar arrays. He holds 2 MSCs in renewable energy engineering from KTH and the Royal Institute of Technology. And at Climatize, their goal is to fund $1 billion of renewable energy projects within the next 5 years. Very ambitious. So I'm going to pass it over to Higo, and let's get going on this amazing conversation.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Will, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you with us. We look forward to this. So, businesses are born out of the recognition of a problem, right? And that recognition comes from entrepreneurs who not only recognize the problem, but believe innately that they have some ability to solve that problem, and hence a business is born. So we're incredibly interested to speak with you about your aha moment, that moment of the problem realization, and then we'll get into the solution. But we really wanted to start by saying, what problem did you recognize that interested you to the point where you decided that this was what I was going to do full time?
Yeah, well, first, guys, thanks for having me on the show. And the aha moment for us in building Climatize was when myself and my co-founder, Alba, joined the global climate strikes in 2019 in Barcelona while completing the first of our master's degrees. And while we were there, we joined this sea of 100,000 people protesting for climate action. And it was this beautiful display of hope and motivation. And there was people from all backgrounds and all ages. And yet I have this very vivid memory of standing on this bench and looking out over this sea of people on Passeig de Gràcia in Barcelona and being struck by this kind of sad realization that we were all going to go home and nothing was going to be different the next day. And I felt like, wow, if you get 100,000 people together and their best option is to make a cardboard sign, that's a glaring problem. Like there is the market that you're looking for. It's right in front of you. And yet, why is it that there is this breakdown between all of this hope and this motivation into actually translating that to tangible, quantifiable carbon reduction? And so that was the original problem that we really set out to solve. And from there, it was kind of like you look this problem in the eyes. And I had previously, through my renewable energy engineering work, always really felt like the problem was going to be solved behind the switch, that it really didn't matter what you believed. If it was clean electrons when you turned on the switch, then we win. And so I'd always felt like I don't want to fight this in the forefront. Let's just win on the back end. And really seeing this climate strike made me recognize that, hey, there is actually a problem in the forefront, and this might be my thing. And as I really dug in, the more and more I began to chew on not only the problem, but also the kind of conceptual upside and opportunity. It really drew me in, and I really have just been chasing it ever since.
That's fantastic.
Well, I can see it in 100,000 people all around you, right? All this activity, all this energy, and to sit back and realize that this could translate into checkbook activism. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of hundreds of cities in which 7.5 million people showed up for those strikes. And when you have that kind of turnout and demand for something, then it is really a signal that there is a problem. And it's just, how do you actually productize the solution? And there's many ways that you can pursue that solution. And as we really boiled it down to kind of first principles, we were able to pull out kind of 2 common paths that could be taken, and we chose the capital route.
Well, I'm curious, like, how did you see the need to solve this problem? Like, how did that come about? How did you land on, financing and helping these projects get funded?
Yeah. So I think it's also a kind of combination of my lived experiences. So as a project manager with Helix Electric in San Diego, I had the opportunity to work a number of different projects, ranging from, building the management building at UCLA, the Anderson Management Building there, doing the electrical work on the San Ysidro border, that renovation project, doing the community solar array at the San Diego Public Library. And yet I always felt like my impact was very limited in that role. And so I didn't feel like I was necessarily going to create the impact that I wanted to have throughout my career. And at the same time, prior to that role, I had been using a platform called Kiva. If you're aware of it, it is micro loans to people in developing countries where you can pool together $25, $50 each to pull maybe $2,500. And that helps an entrepreneur in one of those emerging economies get the kind of kickstart that they need. And it's a 0% interest loan. And with that I had been gifted $50 from one of my family members over a decade ago and continued to recycle that same $50 to help, I believe, 14 people over the course of that period. And so I'd always felt that concept to be very interesting, that you could create this kind of reciprocating engine of impact through that money, so long as it came back to you. And so my then lived experience of seeing that, you know, as an engineer, I could only create so much impact, but money could potentially have a multiplying impact. I saw an opportunity then to bring together those principles of small bits adding up to enough for a loan to really change, to create an outsized impact, and to do it in a way where if it came back to people, they could reciprocate that to create more impact, or potentially in this case, fund more renewable energy. And as I really looked into it, I saw that with finance, you could come in at a very high leverage moment in the life cycle of any given project, that they'll have, all of their siting, their permitting, all of the designs, their purchase order, like all of that will be contractually ready to go if you're dealing with good projects. And then we could serve as that kind of catalytic enabler for the projects. And I could have my fingerprints on many projects and be involved in many new developments in a way that I wouldn't be if I was, say, a project engineer on a very large project for, say, 4 years. That would be the all encapsulating thing of my next extended period of time. So I saw, wow, finance can actually be a way where I can enable many people to go do the work that they're very good at, while kind of having the speed and pace of impact that I wanted to have.
Well, I see that. So I think that $1 billion figure over 5 years is interesting, and I definitely super interested to just kind of dig into the details of Climatize. But curious, because like right now you guys have looks like 1,464 members, got 15 projects going. You've raised a little over $6 million, 6.2 have been raised for these projects.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Like, what do these numbers kind of mean to you, and how do they relate to where you're trying to go to $1 billion in, let's say, 5 years?
Mhm. Sure. So, I mean, at Climatize, we put the total dollar figure as a headline on the main platform. And it's a little bit of a kind of scoreboard for ourselves. This is our measure of success. And here's how we can say that we're creating the impact that we set out to do. And it's both social proof that, hey, you can be part of a community, that even if you're investing $10, you can still be part of something that's larger than yourself. And as that momentum builds, then you can see this organic community building around you, because often people in climate feel a bit isolated. They don't necessarily wear it on their sleeves that they care about our decaying ecosystem. And it's something that people may feel very isolated in their concern for the environment. So we want to create that kind of community that is all pushing towards a common goal. And so the $6 million that we have been able to raise for these projects so far have been able to go fund everything from solar and battery storage on, chicken farms in Tennessee. They have helped a synagogue in New Jersey ultimately signed a power purchase agreement that decreased their power costs. PJM is a notoriously expensive utility region. We have helped facilitate funding for an auto shop that was a microgrid system, solar and battery storage, where then in the fallout of Hurricane Helene, that then system survived unscathed and then became a community resilience hub after the region lost power. And they provided cold storage for food and phone charging for 7 days until the utility was able to come and restore power to that region. So, it's $6 million and 15 projects, but each one of them is a human story. And I think that's a big part of Climatize's mission, is that often fighting climate change is really told in a narrative of mitigating greenhouse gases, which is actually scientifically what we have to do, but hasn't necessarily had a particularly human element spin to it. The reality is that when we can show people that we can benefit human lives, and that much more in American communities, and that it can go and create tangible benefits for those people, then there's a way where investors can potentially earn a competitive return on investment. You can create a benefit in the end user's life, and you can have the climate impact at the same time. And I think that's where some of the climate narrative has strayed and become more controversial, because at times it can feel somewhat anti-human or degrowth. And there are schools of thought that say that those are important, and that's a whole nother topic for a different podcast. But I think to the extent that we can show that climate change can be beneficial to people and achieve the carbon reduction goals that we would all like, then we have an opportunity to actually paint this as something that is broadly beneficial to people and not purely to trees.
Yeah, that's a real force multiplier. There's no doubt about it,
Mhm.
And I'm thinking about all the people that are behind that 6 million, right? Because we
Mhm.
ultimately we associate where we affiliate, right? It's our
Mhm.
interests that introduce us to other people who share a common interest, right? As you
Mhm.
said, that was very interesting about it can be lonely. It's a
Mhm.
phenomenal point. So let me ask, as an investor, like I'm not one, but as an investor, what can you expect? What happens? How is that participation, developed through your mechanism?
Sure. Yeah. So the way that we operate Climatize is we are an SEC registered funding portal, which is the legal speak for a crowdfunding portal. And so you are then pooling your capital together with other investors that are effectively buying something similar to a bond. It is a fixed interest debt note that accrues interest either daily, monthly, depends on the terms. And then from that, once the campaign has hit its funding target, then it closes and the funds are wired to the renewable energy project developer, who often goes to use that for the construction of this new asset. And then there
Mhm.
might be milestones to repay. It can be on a quarterly cadence. So again, you would really want to dig into the terms of any of the specific offerings.
Sure.
But with that, then you're accruing interest, in contrast to, say, buying shares of a company where the value of the company needs to appreciate. With this, there is a contractual obligation to pay that interest on that debt. And so you're holding a debt note similar to a bond. And so with that, then once the project is built, we are working on creating ever more rich content around the life cycle of your project. So, equipment
Good.
showing up in site, on it being installed, the impacts that it's having in the region. And so, that's kind of the next phase of Climatize in helping really build in the narrative of each project, because that is one of the differences between investing through our platform and, say, in a green ETF, for example. With that, your relationship is going to be a stock ticker. And
Right.
with Climatize, you will be able to see your money potentially appreciate while being able to see that you're actually creating this real world impact. And that being one of the big differences, right? If you invest $1,000 in Tesla, like what does that do? You really have no idea. But if you put
Right.
$1,000 to a project in Climatize, you have the potential to actually see your money come to life and then potentially earn a competitive return on investment too.
Yeah, it seems that that would be tremendously intrinsically motivating, right? And that was really what I was
Mhm.
asking about is there's these, the project owners, the recipients of these dollars now have an opportunity to communicate with all these individuals that care
Mhm.
enough that they donated something, right? And
Yeah,
now they're
so
involved. I'm involved in the project now. It's
mhm.
a different tie-in, you know?
Yeah, so two stories on that note. One was we had a project that was covered by the Wall Street Journal, and it was a father-son chicken farm, I believe, in South Carolina. And it was the farm was able to get their project 100% free by stacking a USDA Rural Energy for America program grant and the tax credits created in the Inflation Reduction Act. They were able to get 100% of that capital stack paid for, except they needed the upfront cash if all of those incentives were only retroactive. So the capital was raised on Climatize. The developer was able to go and make their margin building the project. And our investors were able to essentially get their money repaid with interest. And when they opened the project, they actually had kind of a ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yeah.
And then it became this interesting kind of point of local community pride where all of a sudden the other farmers started asking them about how they might leverage those same programs. And the farmers commented that, it was a point of pride for them with their young daughters in terms of taking climate action. And they, as stewards of the land, recognized that it was important to be like on the forward edge of climate change mitigation. So that was just one example. And another was for a farmer's hardware store where one of the investors actually went and visited the store and they got to
Right.
see the project that they had invested in.
Mm. That's so cool.
And that just being a way for them to really see that this is, again, something tangible, that it's creating real infrastructure development in a way that may not be possible through just other options.
Oh,
So
those are two phenomenal stories. Let me just ask one last question. I'm so curious.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about I have three adult children, and it's going to be Christmas. I would much rather invest money in a project, you know, in their behalf.
Mhm.
I mean, is that a thing for you guys? To say, hey, rather than buy a bunch of stuff that these kids don't need, then they can be a part of this and see something grow and live and know that that they're taking part of something. You know.
Mhm. It's something that we're still working on with our legal team because there are just certain challenges around, say, buying securities with one entity and passing them on to another.
Mm.
It's a challenge, but we want to work towards it because, you can imagine there then as much as you and your positive sense with your kids are doing it for the right reasons, there are other people who potentially for money laundering reasons might want to do it in a different
Oh,
way. So we have to
gotcha.
always be kind of thinking around those corners of, yes, we are trying to do it for the good reasons, but some people might not be so altruistic in their motivations. So we're working on
Mm.
that. And other examples, a sustainable travel company. They have an interesting business model. They sell to businesses. They're able to give them a discount and then reinvest that savings into projects where they can then tell the
Mm.
corporates, hey, here's where the money that you saved by, traveling with us was invested, and here was the carbon
Mm.
impact that was created. And so working with them to help them achieve their entire business model promise through our platform. And they get to ultimately keep the interest and the principal invested as well. So for them, it's a very beneficial thing because they have high quality reporting to their clients. So it's interesting because the core use case has been B2C, but we've also been seeing an evolution into B2B as well.
So how does that work? Are you guys on the like carbon markets then? Like if a company's somebody's investing in a company or a project, that does that count for like carbon offsets or what you were just speaking to? Can you clarify that one?
So no, we're not doing anything in the carbon markets
Okay.
whatsoever. The projects, especially a solar and battery storage project, based on, the projected kilowatts that the system was designed to generate over its lifetime, then you can use some kind of general assumptions to be able to then project the carbon impact of it. But again, it's not something that we're selling as a ride along on that
Okay.
security. It's simply, hey,
Right.
you're investing in this project and this is projected to, avoid this much carbon over its life cycle. But, you have to also think about a mitigation of double counting there, right? That ultimately the business might be claiming the same thing, and then you might have two people claiming that. So that's where they can say, hey, your money was invested in these kinds of projects, but it's not coming with a direct, Vera verified offset.
Yeah, I was curious also just in terms of the story and the journey. Like, so for you, are there lots of companies lining up trying to get I mean, I know of a company right now. I'm like, I'm gonna introduce them to you guys. And I know they
Mhm.
have some projects they're trying to get funded, but do you have a lot of companies at your door? Do you have the balance of finding investors? How does that play out? And can you talk about even just some of the challenges in the road that you've gone so far? I think that'd be super interesting.
Sure, yeah. So if I had to go back the day before I started Climatize, I would tell myself it was going to be a lot harder than I originally imagined. Because in hindsight, I look at the business that we're building as kind of like a double black diamond. We are a two-sided marketplace with regulated industries on both sides, securities being one and energy being another.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows two-sided marketplaces, it's perpetually balancing supply and demand. So it is a like fun kind of teeter-totter to constantly be scaling and then also dealing with the kind of regulatory complexities on both sides. So this is not the bunny hill, and we just jumped right into it with no concept of how hard it was actually going to be. When it comes to the
Doesn't don't try
projects,
this at home, kids. That's what you're saying. Don't try this at home.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just if you're gonna do it, be ready. And so, there's the whole mantra of Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, and that is absolutely not what you're able to do in a regulated industry.
Mm.
And especially when it comes to, trust with your investors and dealing with sensitive information, then you cannot break things. And trust is
Hmm.
is very hard to earn and very easy to lose. And so we always are conscious of that as we're building new features and kind of the speed at which we deploy new additions to the platform. They have to be robust and our security has to be good. And so we do regular penetration tests with outside vendors to make sure that our systems are tight and secure. We're constantly making sure that we're working with high quality developers, because the same thing, one of our cultural principles is that we look at this and recognize that every dollar that's invested into Climatize is somebody's hard-earned cash, and they have their own mission and story that they're working and saving towards, whether it's their children's education, whether it's their own retirement. We would look at it as if we are investing our own money, even though we're really the platform operator. And so, you know,
Right.
that definitely comes with a decent amount of responsibility, and is in part why we've only incrementally expanded the asset classes and the kinds of projects that we would work on. So really started in solar, then added on battery storage, then we've done some energy efficiency, and then EV charging infrastructure is now where we're looking at some projects. But we wouldn't get too out into the weeds in terms of projects. We've definitely had to say no to a number of really
Hmm.
interesting projects, but ones that either maybe weren't as commercially de-risked as we were comfortable with, or ones that we just had to say, hey, this actually isn't a sector that we know well enough to really evaluate. Biochar is one example, like totally
Hmm.
works. We know that it's a great carbon capture solution. I just don't know how to underwrite, a feedstock contract in biochar. It's just not my space. I'm a renewable energy engineer.
Mm.
And so that has been one area where there's lots
Hmm.
of opportunities, but we've also had to kind of keep our scope narrow enough that we can also kind of maintain a good enough, like a filter that's at our standards. Um, And I look at it a little bit like Airbnb, right? They had to start out doing mattresses on the floor, and then you got your own bed and a room, and then a flat, and then now they're doing art houses and tree houses, right? Like you can get your way up there, but you have to build a track record of success and the right processes. And then you can kind of expand that aperture, but it has to go incrementally as you both build trust with your user base and with kind of the broader ecosystem, and those network effects begin to really form.
Sounds hard.
It does.
It's a fun problem to work on, right? It's no dull days.
Yeah, it very worthwhile, no doubt about it. I mean, you're
Mhm.
connecting all these individuals who, how do I get involved? How can
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
become a part of the solution? Right? That's a big
Mhm.
question that people ask. And you've
Yeah.
created something very eloquent that answers that question, right? And it doesn't have to be massive because $25, I'm going to give it to you because I believe in this and what's going on.
Yeah.
That's
And so you really you bring up a great point, which is, we in our customer research boiled it down to the first principles of, what is it that everyone could contribute? And those two common threads were time and capital. And on the time side, we saw some really exciting platforms, like, for example, Climate I'm good friends with Evan Hines, the founder of Climate. I love what they're doing because we're attacking the same problem, but just from different angles. And
mm,
so, I love to help teach a course at Climate Base because it just so resonates with me of like, how do we get everybody involved, and how do we make,
right.
more people recognize that the climate jobs are not purely for the scientists and the engineers, but these climate tech companies that are coming into their own maturity need accountants and designers and HR folks as well, just like any other company. And your work can be impact work at the same time. Um, and as we then looked at, okay, well, if there are people really solving for the time problem, then how can we really solve for the capital problem? And how can we
Mm,
make that as accessible as possible to as many people as possible? And so by making the minimum entry point just $10, it really broadens the amount of people who can participate. And sure, the lifetime value of the customer who invests $10 versus the one who does $10,000 is,
sure.
is much smaller. But that is how you build a movement and how you build momentum. And we often find that some of the investors who come in with $10, once they begin to actually understand and appreciate the customer experience of the platform, will then very rapidly expand their wallet share into, $500, $1,500, and then 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. And so they want to be able to dip a toe before they go and commit to a new platform.
Yeah, I love the climate. I just actually I'm a climate-based fellow along with you. I just
Mhm.
graduated from cohort 6, and it is an amazing program. And it does, for me, like brings up a question also, like in terms of Climatize, of how do you find those investors? Because that's certainly, I think we had like 600 people in our cohort, or some, it was a large number of people. It was like a big
Mhm.
community. And kind of to your
Mhm.
point about, you're first on the streets in Barcelona's
Mhm.
you were, and
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
100,000 people out there now. All these people have this opportunity to make, real impact. They can, spend their dollars investing in projects. They can see what happens with those projects. They can even get a
Mhm.
return on their investment. They can follow it through. But how do you find those people, and what's that process been like on the other side of the equation for you in another, like how do you bring them in to
Sure. Yeah.
invest?
So, to start with, we have found that podcasts and is really kind of leading with authenticity has been the great way for us to find our early adopters. Those are the people that we need to make love the platform before we ever get to the people who just kind of like us. And if we can get one person to love us, and then 10 people to love us, and then 100 people to love us, that's actually more, I see, the path to scale than just going out and doing a million Instagram ads to get a bunch of people who make a $100 investment and never come back. And so that's how we've really kind of gotten our message out. And then those people have worked very closely with us to provide feedback on new designs, to provide feedback in customer interviews. Once you're able to work with those people who are then really excited to see you succeed, they will be the people who help then use referrals and drive word of mouth acquisition. And those two
Mm.
channels, if you can get them working well, for one, a platform like ours, where the first time somebody comes, there's platform risk, right? They've never heard of you, that you don't have a brand, you don't have a whole lot of money invested, not a whole lot of track record. And then you need to go give your address, your name, your social security number, your bank account information, and $1,000. Like that's a big hurdle. That's a really high hurdle in contrast to like most platforms where you can just sign up and do like a 7-day trial. So we had to early on really ride on the trust aura of podcast hosts and also be able to come and, like I said, lead with that authenticity, but also show that, I really know my stuff in renewables. Combine all those, people would say, hey, I think this is worth, I think this mission is noble. I think you have a good head on your shoulders and I'll give it a try. And that's how we kind of got things moving. And now we do effectively no paid advertising, and we are growing at about 11% month over month. And so we're really starting to see that kind of early hockey stick inflection of it really starting to grow in terms of user base. And then we just have other fun problems to solve in terms of product design, just little tweaks here and there to improve conversion efficiencies. And that's more where my head is these days, because I look at it as, we got to build a foundation for, a skyscraper, not just like a slab for a suburban house, right? We got to build something
Right.
meaningful in a way. And before we ever then lean on that paid acquisition, there's no point in throwing money at that. If we're going to churn a bunch of people in the process, it's better for us to really dial in those systems and have kind of disciplined growth early on. Then really go and say raise around on the metrics that once we've got them to the place where they're really confident in them, then we can go back to the VC markets and say, hey, look, give us 10 million bucks to scale this thing to the moon, because we know that for every dollar we put in, we're getting, in our case, over 10x. Like we have a customer acquisition cost that's a 20th of our lifetime, or pardon me, other way. Yes, our LTV is almost 20x the customer acquisition cost, but we're again spending almost nothing, driving just word of mouth referral acquisition.
I know our 8 listeners are definitely going to sign up.
They sure will. Well, even if I did, and I will, I would put Climatize Investor on my LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I would promote it. I mean, of course I would promote it, right? And then I'd promote the project, whatever project. I don't know. Can you decide where the money goes, or do I,
Mm-hmm.
go? I want to invest in that company, or does it go into a pool and you guys decide?
So we've started out with really a project by project basis where you get to choose where you allocate your money. And for some people, that's a huge perk. And for others, that's a bug. And so in the future, we'll likely do kind of a blended portfolio where people are able to get a little bit of risk mitigation by having more projects, but it would then be at a lower return profile because of that risk mitigation. So,
Sure.
there will be, multiple products that we're bringing to market in the future with respect to kind of financial product offerings. And then to your point, those are some of the features that we think about building in, the ability to kind of social signal to other social media channels for people to kind of really show that, hey, I'm, here doing this. Ability to originate projects in communities by people who are there that can kind of build those constituencies and coalitions. We're also working on the policy front to try and enable projects that have community co-investment to have advantages, whether it be from the financial incentive or accelerated interconnection. So we're really tackling a lot of different channels to really get this moving forward. And fortunately, so far, all of them seem to be getting traction, which is really exciting. I mean, no dull days, like I said, and we're definitely always working on something, but it's exciting. Like the momentum is what really keeps you like excited and hungry for more.
Yeah. Can you tell us another story about maybe a project that you guys are financing that you feel particularly excited about now? Or
Oh yeah, there were one of them that was just wonderful it was the smallest project that we've posted on the platform to date. It was solar for Deborah's family farm, $60,000. Deborah Lockhart was I think, third generation BIPOC female founder or like farmer. Her parents had worked the land since after just around the Jim Crow era days, and she has this very small organic farm. And she had received one of these Rural Energy for America program grants, and same deal, if we stack the tax credits, we could get her effectively this free solar project. And when her project was funded, she sent us this beautiful email just saying, how excited she was to be able to have this opportunity and how grateful she was and how exhausted she had been from working out in the field all day, but how this had just kind of invigorated her. And now we got these photos of the people, installing the solar project, and it's in the ground. It's energized, and we've already repaid 50% of the principal plus interest on that back to investors. And so that one felt really good. Again, like real human impact. Somebody who is just jazzed to be given a shot and to have people believe in them. And that was one where it just like, this is creating a ripple effect for these people and these lives. And some of the interesting things are just, kind of going back to the project on the farmer's hardware store, that was in a very traditionally Republican community. And the person who, in particular, visited the project is from a very liberal, Democratic region. And to bridge these kind of political divides over a commonality in a way that brought people together who otherwise never would have met one another, and to do it for the benefit of each other and to achieve climate impact at the same time was, I think, something that was very unique and refreshing in this moment for sure.
Great story.
Beautiful. Yeah. What would have been for Deborah, the woman that had the farm and the family? What's
Mhm.
her alternative? Like, so she didn't have something like Climatize to lean on, and if you hadn't
Mhm.
helped her, but what is her alternative for financing?
Mhm. Sure. For a project at 60K, you might be able to go get funding from other channels. That one falls into a realm where you might have some more options. The challenge is often when you get kind of above $250,000, that's where community banks, CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions, they rarely know how to underwrite a solar project from a technical nor an economic perspective.
Hmm.
And so while they would go and do $250,000 in a construction loan to any other project, often with solar, the answer is no. And that is even worse in regions where you have kind of a moral, call it, separation from the belief in climate change, or however we want to call that. And so in those cases, that's where you have this real chicken and egg where, the institutions don't know how to fund it, nor do they really care to learn about it. And then you're having these projects that have federal incentives backing the entire thing not getting funded, which is crazy. And so, you know, we have found a lot of traction in helping people see that investing in solar is a lot like investing in commercial real estate, in the sense that you have a collateralized, real world asset that has contracted cash flows, and you could look at it from a net operating income perspective, just like you could any other commercial real estate. Then there's this light bulb kind of aha moment for people where instead of a power purchase agreement, you have a commercial tenant, and instead of a building, you have a solar array. That is an aha moment for them. But I digress back, like your original question was like, what were her options? She may have been able to go to a residential solar lender and get that $60,000. But in the end, she had a community of people that would want to support her and be able to invest in her project. And that was where, through farmers markets and things like that, she was in
Yeah.
part able to spread the word and raise the funding for her project.
Well, this has been amazing. I mean, the work you're doing is absolutely amazing, and it's so human. I mean, it really is so human, and you can get your arms around being part of a better future and helping people, investing. Um, what's the future? Like what's next for Climatize? What does 2025 look for you guys? What would you like to leave the audience with?
Sure, yeah. So, like you mentioned, the what's up next, we're gunning for that $1 billion a year within 5 years. So the goal by the end of 2025 is to hit $50 million worth of projects funded. And really that's continuing to scale our network and our community. And so, my message to your listeners is that, it really takes all of us. We are each a drop in the bucket, but at the same time, with enough people really building in and piling on, then we are the people to be able to make the change. And I really do believe that now more than ever, if there is a decrease in top-down funding, given a change in administration, then it presents an opportunity for new models to rise and fill those gaps like ours, and really democratize both the ownership and investment opportunity in the energy transition and in energy broadly. Energy is the single commodity that we have never used less of. And we're only going to use more in this AI crypto future. And with that, there's going to be increasing energy demand. And so to the extent that we can all help really fund energy in our communities and drive it in a kind of bottoms up way that spreads the opportunity, both the economic opportunity as well as, the opportunity to bring our community and people closer together, then that's what we're here for. And that's what Climatize stands for.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, and best of luck. And we'll absolutely spread the word. You're doing good work. So I'll let Mr. Higo get the last word.
No, great to get to know you and great to get to know Climatize. I look forward to seeing big things.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a fun conversation.
It has been. Learned a ton. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Good luck, Will.